Help give kids an extra life by donating today to help sick and injured children. Link in the description and pinned comment below. Never underestimate the usefulness of a good water bottle. With the inconsistency of the Mega Man X series, one thing that has remained more or less constant is the quality of its soundtrack. All 8 games in the main series, as well as the spin-offs, have at least a few banger tracks that stick with you. Generally, they tend to fall under the category of rock, but in choosing my 10 favorite stage themes in the series, it seems my tastes are a bit more varied than I expected, since this list is going to cover quite a range of moods. Now, I am covering stage themes here, so don't expect to see X vs. Zero or any of the Sigma battle themes today. Also, I don't want a couple games to dominate the list, so I started from my 2 favorites from each of the 8 main games and worked from there, so each game's gonna get a turn in the spotlight. Yes, even X7. There really isn't much in the way of criteria other than that, so here's my Maverick Hunting Mission playlist. It's game time! Okay, if you were to hold me at gunpoint to say one good thing about Mega Man X7, it's that the soundtrack is actually not as bad as I remember. Yes, even a complete trash heap failure like X7 can have some pretty banger tunes. Yeah, there are a couple clunkers, but there are also some pretty rockin' tracks in this lineup. Bosses like Vanishing Gungaroo, Ride Borsky, and even The Onion have some pretty solid riffs. But if you were to ask me, the song that stands out the most in this one is for a reason no one would expect. Oh, I get it. Red Alert's base is on the remains of Silent Hill! Soul Asylum, the song that plays in the chamber that contains the obligatory boss rush, sounds more like something out of a horror game than freaking Mega Man X. The distorted instrumentation that plays through what sounds like the G-Man's radio filter makes my hair stand on end. Wake up, X. Wake up and smell the ashes. Robots can't smell. And it just gets creepier as more instruments get added and... Is that Peter Griffin's laugh? Again, this is the last place I expect to hear horror music, but I love it for that. I guess I shouldn't be surprised though, considering the boss rush room looks like a freaking graveyard. See? It got coffins! What is this, Mega Man X or freaking Castlevania? Did Dracula's soul get reincarnated again? If Axel didn't already feel guilty having to hunt down his former comrades, this track would probably reflect his horror at having to fight them again. Especially Hyanard. X2's soundtrack was a bit more varied than the original. Where X1 relied heavily on rock-style music, X2's music leaned into a couple more styles. As for my favorite from that game, I honestly found myself drawn to the ones that were less intense. So there's this metal enemy crab, and he has quite the catchy bop to accompany his stage, which is arguably the best water level in all of Mega Man, X or otherwise. Wide open, reduced gravity isn't a liability, and not a single death spike in sight. Bubble Crab's theme starts out with some chill percussion reflecting the normal serenity of the ocean, then all of a sudden, the intensity picks up with 16-bit horn hits as it moves toward the main part of the theme, which returns to a chill vibe with some mellow rock guitar riffs until it picks up one more time with a swelling build-up before returning to the start. You get a real sense of duality here, between the ocean's serenity and the intensity of the enemy forces that are invading, mainly in the form of that submarine and Bubble Crab himself, which will have to attack his weak point for massive damage. Interestingly enough, this theme was remixed in X5 for Duff McWhalen's stage. Some people may think this is lazy, especially when the beta had a completely different theme for him, but the remix is really nice. The start is even more chill and the middle has some great guitar. I'm just hoping that Duff McWhalen cited his sources with the remix. And what's with this title whale bullshit? I don't care if the license expired. His name is Duff McWhalen. I lie awake at night thinking about this. His name is Duff McWhalen! Compared to the first 2 games, the soundtrack from X3 seems to get comparatively little respect. Now that may or may not be due to the fact that X3 as a whole is a lackluster game compared to the first two. Nevertheless, the soundtrack does manage to get a lot out of the SNES sound font. A lot of it comes down to more 16-bit rock, with themes like the ones from Toxic Seahorse and Volt Catfish. But if you ask me which stage theme clears, it's this one. I'm surprised that in a series whose soundtrack tends to lean into rock, it took me getting 3 segments in to talk about a theme that goes for rock. But leave it to the roboticized Heracross to deliver the goods from X3's track selection. Gravity Beetle's theme, while not as meme-worthy as, say, Guile's theme, gives off a similar vibe. It's got this heroic sort of feel to it, the kind that gives you determination, which you're gonna need to get through this game. Those driving guitar riffs are packed with energy and drive, and you feel like such a badass listening to it while tearing through that bass. While it is relatively short as a theme, it is definitely intense and well worth keeping in the conversation. Granted, I'm talking mainly about the Super Nintendo version. The PS1 version, on the other hand, slowed down the tempo, changed the instrumentation completely, and made the whole thing just seem a bit off. Granted, the drums are really cool, but the synth loses some of that edge factor, and the changes to some of the rhythms just don't feel right, if I'm being completely honest, which I am. What do I look like, a politician? So yeah, this is a rare case in which more bits don't make for a better track. While X5 was the beginning of the X series decline, you cannot by any means say the same about the soundtrack. Aside from the remix of Bubble Crab's theme, we've got music like the epic X vs. Zero theme, themes that invoke a sense of mystery like Dark Dizzy's theme, dance-off-worthy themes like the final stage theme, and of course, a lot of intense driving themes like the one that plays when you want to duel with a Pegasus. Enough is enough! I have had it with these monkey-fighting mavericks on this Monday to Friday plane! Is it just me, or do Sky Stages in particular have really awesome music? I guess it's the thrill of fighting bad guys at 35,000 feet. The theme that plays during the Skyverse stage, or Spiral Pegasus if you insist on what the Legacy Collection calls him, is a fast-paced and intense theme, fitting for the situation at hand, which, reminder, you're defusing time bombs, or barely failing at that and taking massive damage. The way it starts is similar to a lot of other themes with a quick beat and some sweet riffs, and when the main melody hits, it gives a nice sense of tension and movement fitting the mission. Eventually, as it gets to the climax, the melody turns somewhat bittersweet. A fitting mood considering that the Skyver is one of the last remnants of the Repliforce and still hasn't forgotten what the Maverick Hunters did. Never mind that the whole war wouldn't have happened if Sigma didn't stick his nose in things again. This is a fitting theme that's both rocking and intense to fit the mission at hand, as well as a hint of sadness reflecting the admittedly limited character of the Skyver himself. At least we got some things about this guy from the dialogue in the game, and not having to rely on supplemental material. I will shout my love for X4 from the fucking rooftops! The only game in the series to surpass the original, so much of this game is amazing, and that of course carries over to the soundtrack. Aside from the PS1 port of X3, this was the first X game to have full CD quality sound, and as a result, there were not only cleaner tracks, but a lot more variety in the musical styles due to the variety of instrumentation that was now possible. This resulted in a soundtrack that catered to several different styles of stage themes. Case in point, the owls are not what they seem. Ah, who am I kidding? This owl is exactly who he seems. A badass with one hell of a salute like I brought up before. See? Told you that Sky Stages have awesome themes. This isn't even the last one we'll see, but more on that later. This is the theme of the Air Force stage from X4, where Storm Owl hangs out commanding his fleet of airships and lasers and whatnot, and his theme is damn good. The theme has a heroic feel to it, as you single-handedly face down an entire Air Force, just you and your conveniently placed ride armor. The synth is the star of the show here, providing the driving melody as you bring down airship after airship with a heroic and yet somber feeling, as this whole aforementioned war is going on. Percussion only adds to the intensity of the theme, pulsing with energy and determination as you make your way through the troops and lasers towards the lair of the big commander himself. Heck, the second loop of the main theme is even better, with more intense percussion, and after the second main verse, one final triumphant flourish of the chorus before making its way around for another full loop. The whole package makes you feel like such a badass that it's hard not to love it. And like I said, it's not even the best Sky Stage theme. Playing through the Legacy Collection gave me a reminder at how frustrating, rushed, and downright undercooked X6 was. And that's a shame because it had the potential to be really good. The story was headed in a good direction before Sigma got shoehorned in, the controls worked really well, the armor sets were great, but the level design and boss battles fumbled the ball harder than Dak Prescott.
Hey, I will never pass up an opportunity to take a pot shot at the Cowboys. Cry some more.
And it's such a bummer because the soundtrack kicks ass! In spite of the depressing intro stage theme, the soundtrack as a whole rocks so much harder than the game deserves. Seriously, take a listen to this. Wait a minute, is it just me or is that the final countdown I'm hearing? I'm not kidding, these opening horns sound like they're copying Europe's homework and changing just enough so that the teacher won't figure it out. Not that I'm complaining. And it's not just the opening horns. The theme from Infinity Maginion's stage sounds every bit as heroic as its 80s inspiration, even though the instrumentation is different and the tempo is higher. After the intro, we're treated to a verse featuring a chiming melody backed by an intense bass track that pulses with energy and motivation. It's like the feeling of a space mission backed with rock music as you venture out towards the stars. Definitely 80s-esque. And once you hit the chorus, you feel the power of those righteous 32-bit guitar riffs as you reach the climax, pushing you forward to that irritating stage, dodging lasers from every direction, flying enemies that bombard you at regular intervals, and whatever nightmare phenomenon you got stuck with. This awesome theme almost makes it worth the trouble of getting through this stage and taking down the titanic weapon behind you. Though nothing would make the boss fight worth it, or the nightmare area. I mean, come on, the nightmare is literally on top of the Reploid you're trying to rescue, seriously! If I'm gonna be honest, you're best off listening to this on your music streaming site of choice.
Unless you have Rainy Turtleoid's weapon, that one makes cake out of Illumina.
When Mega Man X was first released, it was a huge freaking deal. By this point, we in the West had already been through 5 Mega Man games. Yeah, 6 was localized after X, if you can believe that. And the basic formula had been well established by that point, in terms of structure, gameplay, presentation, and the familiar chiptune soundtrack excellence. So when we heard that the franchise was coming to Super Nintendo, fans were hyped. It was promising improved gameplay, 16-bit graphic excellence, and exciting new music. Now imagine starting the game for the first time, and instead of a stage select theme, you hear this. How could I not? Honestly, how in the name of Dr. Light could I not? This is the most iconic theme in the series, because it's a sign of what you're in for with this game. Instead of going to a stage select screen, you're dropped smack into a robot war on a damaged highway with this theme hitting you with its glorious riffs from the get-go. This hard-rocking 16-bit guitar helped define the soundtrack for the original trilogy, as most of the themes in X1 through X3 were rock. And the theme itself is crazy good, with an awesome melody that just screams action, backed by an intense bass line that underscores the melody with pride. It just has that feel of urgency as X fights his way through the malignant machines in a struggle for his life. And you feel just so energized as you listen to this banger, especially when you're riding on cars! And we can't forget the version from the PSP remake, which is every bit as awesome as the original, with the improved hardware of Sony's handheld adding quite a bit more variety to the piece. In fact, the second loop has some interesting variation on the backing before the loop completes. And then there's Smash Ultimate. Who could forget hearing this crazy remix with Zero's reveal as an assist trophy? This remix cranks up the rock factor even further, enhancing this already iconic tune into the stratosphere. The only official remix of this theme that I don't like was the rendition from Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. But then again, that's down to the choice of instruments for the Capcom characters in general for that game. So, here's an interesting thing about X4 and X5. As you start the game, you have the option to pick between X and Zero. While that in itself is pretty damn awesome, giving you the choice of playstyles to start the game, there's a little something extra to it. The intro stage theme differs depending on who you choose. And all 4 of these themes are pretty damn awesome. Both the Erasure themes from X5 are bangers in their own right, as well as Zero's intro stage theme from X4. But X's intro stage theme hits differently, you know? Oh baby, now we've broken into the new generation with a bang! X's version of the Sky Lagoon theme kicks ass with a 2-verse loop that's basically saying, hey, I'm X. I've got a job to do, so get out of my way before I have to use force. You start with that awesome heroic opening, announcing X's arrival and letting you know that he's ready for action. A courageous introduction complete with 32-bit CD quality audio. Then it kicks into the verse and the beat picks up with a driving percussion and more heroic instrumentation on the melody, pushing you to victory. And it picks up near the end of the verse with a motivating bridge which carries back to the intro. It makes you feel so awesome as you tear through the invading Mavericks both in the city and on the ground below. Every second surges with adrenaline, keeping you pumped for more. Eventually you get to the second verse, which gives you another bit of that adrenaline hit, ending with a pounding climax reprising the start of the piece before the loop completes and returns to start. It's an awesome theme for an awesome intro stage for an amazing game. So are there any official remixes worth listening to? Ew, MIDI sampling. Couldn't we have gotten an arrangement of this in Project Cross Zone 2, where the music in general was so much better? I mean, we got a better remix of the intro stage in X3 in that game. Okay, let's see what else we can find. Holy crap, we got an orchestra mix! My god, this is epic. We've got an incredibly dramatic rendition of this theme, conveying the raw emotion of a warrior who has endured way too much, but still carries on knowing it's the only way. Oh man, this is straight up fire! Wonder where it's from! Look, I've already talked about the intro stage theme in X1, but the rest of the stage themes are straight up fire too. From the cool feel of Chill Penguin's theme, to the rocking themes of Launch Octopus, Spark Mandrill, and Boomer Kuwanger, to the intense and dramatic theme which accompanies your infiltration into Sigma's fortress, this soundtrack doesn't have a single miss. However, when it comes to the 8 Mavericks that make up this initial roster, one of them flies high above the rest.
Take it, Johnny!
It's Storm Eagle!
You can't go wrong with 16-bit guitar riffs for an opening, am I right or am I right? Storm Eagle's theme is the MegamanX equivalent of Danger Zone from Top Gun. You just get that same feeling from listening to it. It's a short loop on the original version, but it's a rush. From the opening riff, you're given a heroic melody with 16-bit horns leading a triumphant charge into the enemy's midst, like taking off in your fighter jet and scrambling into your mission full speed. Eventually, the horns give way to synthesized strings like violins proclaiming your victory, taking down everything in your way. It feels triumphant, as if nothing can stand in your way as you reach for victory. It's an iconic piece for one of the most iconic Mavericks in the entire series. And of course, let's also talk about how this was adapted to the more powerful PSP and Maverick Hunter X. And, well, X-Dive, but mostly Maverick Hunter X. And yeah, with the hardware of the PSP, it sounds even more like the instruments the original emulated. Well, the first loop melody was horns all the way throughout, but it feels even more like a dogfight. The riffs are even more driving, and the horns in the melody sound even more amazing. However, there's actually a second verse to the theme here. The second verse of the loop starts a bit more subdued with a more chill synth melody here, but it only lasts for a brief moment before the horns kick back up for the finale before the loop concludes. Now that is how you remake a legendary theme for a great remake. Enhance the instruments that made the original great, add that little something extra that lets you know we're in a new era, and boom, you've got something golden. Whichever platform you're on, be it Super Nintendo, PSP, PC, or mobile, this is one theme you simply can't go wrong with. It is, indeed, Storm Eagle. And we all love it for that. And before we move on, here are some honorable mentions. Crystal Snail's theme from X2. It has that little bit of beauty to it, along with the rock themes. Crush Crawfish's theme from X3. It's got a lot of rock to it, and it's very heavy, but it's very satisfying. Squid Adler's theme from X5. The fast-paced beat almost makes the Ride Chaser section bearable. Blaze Heatnix's theme from X6. The guitar riffs are almost as hard as dealing with those donuts. Vanishing Gungaroo's theme from X7. Some nice guitar riffs for a mediocre stage. And Gravity Antonian's theme from X8. Just has that air of mystery about it. And now let's find out what the Arcade Nation has to say with this month's patron picks.
My pick is the intro stage theme from Mega Man X3. It's the perfect accompaniment to kicking those bullies out of your base. Even better, you get remixed in Project Cross Zone 2.
Metal Valley from X8. Running away from that giant mechanaloid is so exhilarating, especially if you're playing as Axel and can fire directly at its face. And getting to smash its face in so many times with a crane at the end? So satisfying.
Flame Mammoth's theme from Mega Man X is without a doubt the most underrated theme in the entire series. It has amazing synths, amazing melody, and it hits hard.
Okay, if you've been taking notes up to this point, you probably noticed which game I have yet to cover here. Yes, that's right, it's X8. Truth be told, while X8 is a real palate cleanser after the previous two games, and honestly better than X5 for that matter, not every song in the soundtrack is memorable. I'd say the ratio is about 70-30 of bangers to stuff I forget about 5 seconds after listening to it. Aside from the honorable mentions, other highlights include the Ride Armor theme, Noah's Park, the Trial theme from Optic Sunflower stage, and the operatic finale of Sigma Palace. But out of all the stage themes in this game and the series, one towers above them all. The most epic, amazing, and downright legendary elevator music ever made. From the minute you're greeted with those SNES-style guitar riffs, you know you're in for something special. The theme that plays during your ascent up the Jacob Orbital Elevator is the definitive theme of X8, and for good reason. It is a total jam, and PlayStation 2 rock at its absolute finest. The 16-bit guitar gives way to an explosive bass intro that prepares you to rocket into space. And once the melody hits just right, the result is something you just want to dance to. It's not quite as fast-paced as some of the other stage themes on here, but it just feels special, and it makes you want to say, yo, dude, let's ride this thing up into space. The stage itself is just one big enemy rush as you make your way to the top where Sigma's lapdog is waiting to get in your way again, but the theme makes it feel like one exciting ride. Those PS2 instruments complement the SNES sample backing oh so well, with a melody that drives you forward, the kind you just want to bob your head to if it weren't for all the mavericks you were dealing with. And then it chills for just a bit with a little synth before the big build up to the chorus, and then BAM! One big rocking jam to close out the verse. You'll love hearing it throughout this stage. Not to mention, X-Dive has a rocking remix of this theme as well, so if you have the offline version, check this remix out when you're taking on the challenge stages. This version is faster paced and the instruments are different, but this is no less rockin'. There's no better track for traveling to the moon, and there's no better theme for taking out Maverick scum. In fact, if they made another vs. Capcom game and Axel somehow got in, I'm about 90% sure this would be his theme.
Of course, and some of you are probably tired of me saying it, but I'd rather see Capcom make X9 and finally resolve that big cliffhanger from the end of X8. Copy chips have been put back into production, and we still don't know Axel's fate. I want to save the boy, damn it! I'm the Quarter Guy, and until next time, the arcade is closed.
I want to climb a tower with 60 floors, packed with all sorts of monsters like slimes, evil knights, wizards, and dragons, searching for all sorts of mystical items, and probably having to consult a guide several times to determine not only how to obtain said items, but also which ones I have to get, and which ones not to get, all to defeat a demon, retrieve a sacred artifact, and rescue a fair maiden. Why? Because it's there. Next time, QG at the arcade, the Tower of Druaga. It's game time! Hey everyone, QG here. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Feel free to check out my Twitter and my Twitch streams, and consider supporting me through Patreon, and donating to my Extra Life campaign to support Children's Wisconsin. Thanks for watching.